The kitchen felt like the safest place in the world that Saturday morning. Ethan Parker stood near the stove, humming softly as the smell of butter warmed the room and pancakes sizzled golden on the pan. Sunlight spilled to the window, touching the wooden dining table where his wife, Laura, sat scrolling on her phone. It was their weekend ritual: coffee, breakfast, laughter, the kind of slow, peaceful morning that felt untouched by the outside world. Ethan placed a plate in front of her, smiling with the quiet pride of a man who loved taking care of the people he loved. He sat across from her, hands wrapped around a warm mug, believing that this simple life was happiness. He didn't know that within seconds, the peace he protected so dearly would be shattered beyond repair. Without looking up from her screen, Laura took a bite of pancake and spoke with the same tone she used to talk about office gossip or weather updates. "I should tell you before you hear it from someone else. I've been sleeping with my boss. It's not personal. I just needed a change." The words hit Ethan like cold steel. His fingers lost strength. His coffee mug threatened to slip as a fog of disbelief wrapped around him. There was no tremble in her voice, no apology, no hesitation, as if she was describing a new hairstyle she tried or a restaurant she visited. She continued casually, explaining how the affair helped her career, how it gave her excitement, how she got a promotion because she deserved better than a boring domestic life. Ethan sat frozen in silence, listening to a wife who sounded like a stranger. Ethan finally forced his voice to exist, a whisper that carried years of love, loyalty, and disbelief. "Are you saying our marriage isn't enough for you?" Laura didn't flinch. She shrugged with annoyance, like he was overreacting to something minor. "Don't take it so seriously. Plenty of couples survive this." Ethan's heartbeat pounded in his ears as he looked at her, really looked at her. The woman he trusted, the woman he built a life around, sitting there so casually after tearing everything apart. Every memory suddenly felt like a lie. His voice stayed disturbingly calm, calmer than rage, colder than heartbreak. "So you chose your boss over me," he whispered. Laura finally met his eyes for a split second, not with regret, but with self-satisfaction. "I chose myself," she said, and went back to her phone while his entire world collapsed inside him. Ethan Parker didn't grow up with much. His childhood was small apartments, second-hand clothes, and learning early that nothing in life came without work. By 16, he was juggling school during the day and stocking shelves at night, later picking up construction labor just to help his family survive. In college, where he attended on a partial scholarship, he met Laura, brilliant, ambitious, sharp-tongued, and alive in a way he'd never seen before. She dreamed big, and Ethan fell in love with not just her, but the idea that he could build a safe world for her to thrive in. While she studied late nights to chase corporate success, Ethan worked double shifts at a warehouse and later as a carpenter, paying bills and sacrificing sleep so she would never struggle the way he did. He built his life around her dreams, believing loyalty was love. Years into their marriage, sacrifices became routine for Ethan. Vacations turned into postponed plans, his hobby of woodworking faded behind overtime shifts, and every promotion he chased wasn't for himself. It was so Laura could live comfortably, dress beautifully, and rise in her career. But the more he poured into the marriage, the more Laura shifted away. She began returning home late, brushing off dinner plans because she had networking after hours, and praising colleagues far too often. Sometimes she mocked Ethan's blue-collar job disguised as jokes. "You're good with tools, but you don't think big." Ethan tried not to let it break him. He convinced himself it was stress, work pressure, a phase that would pass. He told himself love wasn't always perfect. But deep inside, something was cracking, because every time he looked at her, she seemed farther away, already living a life that didn't include him on the evening after Laura's cold confession. Ethan found himself sitting alone in the living room, hands trembling as he opened their anniversary photo album, something he hadn't touched in years. Page after page showed smiles, vacations they couldn't afford, but he worked overtime for surprise birthday dinners, their first apartment, their honeymoon on a budget beach resort. He once believed those moments were the proof of a love worth fighting for, but now every photo looked staged, every smile rehearsed. His chest tightened as realization crept in. The person he thought he knew never loved him the way he loved her. His entire adult life identity and purpose were built around someone who never valued loyalty the way he did. Sitting under the dim living room light, one memory after another turned poisonous, and for the first time, Ethan didn't recognize a man in those photos anymore. Later that night, Ethan swallowed every ounce of pride and tried to have a real conversation. Not to argue, but to save the marriage he still desperately believed in. He spoke gently, asking if they could go to counseling, take a break from work stress. Travel somewhere like they used to. Laura didn't hesitate. She rejected every idea with a cold, bored expression. She leaned against the counter, arms crossed, barely looking at him. She explained that her boss was more ambitious, that he makes her feel alive, and that Ethan should focus on a house and not the romance. Every word landed like a blade. Ethan stood there in silence, fighting tears, struggling to understand how his wife, the person he built his life around, could say such things without flinching. It wasn't confusion anymore. It was cruelty. After she left the room, Ethan sat on the couch, numb, but something inside him forced him to pick up her laptop, left unlocked on the cushion beside him. Emails, messages, and calendar updates told a story more painful than the affair itself. Laura planned to move in with her boss in a few weeks. Her boss was listed as her +1 for all future work events, and Ethan's name had been erased without hesitation. Screenshots of group chats from her team showed her bragging about how easy it was to fool Ethan, mocking how he thought making pancakes made him a good husband. Ethan's breath shattered into short, painful gasps. It wasn't just betrayal. She treated him like a joke. He wasn't just unwanted. He had been laughed at. The humiliation hit harder than heartbreak. It broke something fundamental inside him. When Laura returned, she didn't hide anything. She didn't even care that Ethan knew. She casually stated she would be taking over the house paperwork soon, because she deserved it more, since her career was worth more than his carpentry income and reputation mattered more than loyalty. She talked about uprooting the life he built as if shifting furniture in a room. Ethan barely heard the rest. Something inside him went still, unnervingly still. This wasn't a mistake, or a midlife crisis, or emotional confusion. Laura wasn't sorry. She wasn't conflicted. She intended to take everything, and expected to hand it over quietly. His vision blurred with tears he refused to let fall as he whispered to himself, not out of hatred, but survival. This isn't just betrayal. This is war. For the first time, Ethan stopped breaking and started changing the eye in the days that followed. Laura stopped pretending. She didn't hide her affair anymore. In fact, she flaunted it. She brought home expensive gifts from her boss, placing them proudly on the table where Ethan could see. Designer perfumes, jewelry, handbags, all wrapped in packaging he could never afford. She spoke loudly on the phone about her amazing man, laughing in ways Ethan hadn't heard in years, not caring that he was sitting right there. When Ethan didn't react, she stepped even further, lecturing him like a child. You need to be mature and accept change, Ethan. People evolve. You should focus on the house, and let me focus on my future. Her words dripped with superiority, and she delivered them with the certainty that he had broken beyond repair. But inside, Ethan wasn't collapsing anymore. He was awakening to a phone call with his sister, Grace, confirmed everything Ethan needed to know. Laura hadn't only betrayed him emotionally, she had already started taking control of his life financially. She had secretly filed for a trademark of Ethan's woodworking business under her own name, planning to legally own the brand he had built from the ground up. Grace warned him that Laura had everything planned. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't cry. Something shifted deep inside him. The part that once begged her to love him simply vanished. He became calm, disciplined, strategic. At night on the couch, with Laura assuming he was broken, Ethan quietly gathered evidence. Affair messages, financial records, workplace misconduct, digital screenshots, contract copies. He didn't breathe a word, didn't ask questions, didn't accuse her. The more silent he became, the more blind she became. And he used that blindness as fuel. Laura misread the quietness as weakness. She bragged more openly, became louder, crueler, believing Ethan was emotionally defeated. She didn't recognize the way his eyes had changed. When she casually announced, while painting her nails at the dining table, that her boss would be staying over for dinner to see the house before moving in one day, She expected Ethan to break again. Instead, for the first time in weeks, Ethan smiled, small, controlled, terrifyingly calm. She mistook it for agreement, unaware it was a quiet smile of a man who had reached the final stage of pain. Control. "Sure," he said gently. "Let's do dinner." In that moment, he wasn't a heartbroken husband anymore. He was a strategist, and dinner wouldn't be a welcome celebration. It would be the first move of a war she didn't even know she'd already lost. Saturday evening arrived with the stillness before a storm. Laura stood by the door, smiling like a woman showing off a trophy as her boss. Expensive suit, smug grin, predatory confidence. Stepped inside. Ethan welcomed him with a calmness that seemed almost gracious. He poured the wine, served the food, complimented the man's career and Laura's success, playing the perfect host. Laura watched with an entertained twinkle in her eyes, almost thrilled to see Ethan acting so submissive, believing humiliation had tamed him. She laughed loudly at her boss's flirtatious jokes, leaned against him, and spoke as if Ethan wasn't even there. Every detail of the evening was designed to show Ethan how obsolete he was, but he sat with an unreadable smile, eyes steady, movements controlled. The trap had already been set, and they were too intoxicated with arrogance to notice. Halfway through dinner, Ethan stood, walked to the television, and without a word plugged in a USB. Emails appeared first, flirtations, scheduling of secret hotel meetings, performance favors exchanged for promotions. Then video from workplace security footage, and voice call logs with timestamps rolled across the screen. The boss's confident posture vanished instantly, his complexion turning the color of wet paper. Laura froze, fork hovering in the air, unable to breathe. Corporate misconduct, harassment policy violations, bribery, favoritism. Enough data to destroy reputations and careers within hours. Ethan remained silent while the boss stuttered excuses, sweating through his shirt. Laura's eyes darted wildly, trying to calculate how bad the damage really was. That was when the doorbell rang. A legal courier handed Ethan a folder. Divorce papers, fraud lawsuit documents, a request for restraining order, and confirmation that the trademark had already been transferred back to him. Laura's face collapsed into chaos. Screaming, pleading, blaming Ethan, then blaming her boss, then begging again. Her boss didn't stay to console her. He bolted out the door, yelling into his phone, trying to salvage whatever was left of his career. The house echoed with the sound of Laura falling to her knees, sobbing, reaching for Ethan, swearing she didn't mean it, that she could fix everything, that she loved him. Ethan didn't yell. He didn't cry. He simply looked at her with a calmness she had never seen, the calmness of someone free. "You didn't ruin my life," he said quietly. "You freed me from people who never deserved to be in it." Without slamming a door, without turning back, he walked out of the house while she screamed his name. She reached for him, but he didn't stop, not even for a final glance. Months passed, and Ethan Parker became almost unrecognizable, not because of revenge, but because of renewal. His woodworking business, once small and overshadowed by insecurity, began to flourish. Orders increased, collaborations came in, and his craftsmanship, pure, honest, and passionate, finally received the recognition it always deserved. He expanded to a larger workshop, hired a team, and built the kind of workplace culture he had always dreamed of. Built on respect, loyalty, and gratitude. Grace stood by him through everything, sometimes helping the shop, sometimes just sitting beside him on bad days, quietly reminding him he wasn't alone. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but it no longer controlled him. Every piece of what he shaped, every table he sanded smooth, every project completed was proof that life continues, and that a destroyed past doesn't mean a destroyed future. While Ethan built a new life, Laura's world unraveled. Losing her job was only the beginning. Corporate investigations spread, friends distanced themselves, and her reputation crumbled beyond repair. She tried contacting Ethan through emails, mutual acquaintances, messages from unknown numbers, all blocked. For the first time, she discovered what it felt like to be powerless. But Ethan didn't gain strength from watching her fall. He gained strength from choosing not to look back. One quiet night, instead of writing to her, he wrote to himself. He forgave himself for loving too deeply, for ignoring red flags, for fighting alone in a marriage where loyalty wasn't shared. The letter didn't say her name once. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about a man finally understanding that love shouldn't require self-destruction. One final milestone marked Ethan's healing. Renovating the dining room, the very place where his marriage died. Instead of avoiding it, he transformed it. Walls painted fresh, shelves installed to hold tools and finished pieces, sunlight pouring through new windows. Where there once sat wine glasses and betrayal, now stood carving sets, blueprints, and unfinished with that promised life and beauty. It became his personal studio, a sanctuary of creation, independence, and pride. Every morning, he walked into that room not with grief, but with purpose. The past wasn't erased, it was rewritten. The room no longer represented humiliation. It represented rebirth. Ethan didn't need revenge to feel whole. He needed growth. And as he stood in his new studio, dust on his hands and hope in his eyes, he finally understood. Healing wasn't about forgetting. Healing was about becoming. 1 year later. The quiet cafe feels like a different world compared to the storm Ethan once lived inside. The sunlight filters through the soft curtains, warm and gentle. Nothing like the harsh fluorescent lights of the courtroom and the cold bedroom he once cried in. Ethan sits at a small wooden table, laughing softly with someone new. It isn't romance yet. It isn't meant to be. It's slow, patient, respectful. Something a forgotten love could feel like. The new person listens to him, allows him to speak without interruption, without judgment, without comparison. For the first time in years, Ethan isn't performing, isn't pretending, isn't begging to be enough. He just exists, and that is finally acceptable. He is surrounded by warm conversation and genuine care. It's simple, yet it's everything he once prayed for. Ethan is not healed. Back outside the cafe window stands Laura, and time has not been kind to her. Her once confident posture is gone, replaced by a fragile stillness. The sparkle she wore proudly, the makeup, the expensive clothes, the arrogance, is washed away by exhaustion carved into her face. For just a second, her eyes meet Ethan's through the glass. She hopes to find hatred or longing in his expression, something that proves she still matters. But Ethan feels nothing, not rage, not affection, not regret. His heart doesn't jump or crack. It remains still and peaceful, like a lake finally cleared after a long storm. She reaches for cafe door as if she wants to step back into his life, or maybe just apologize, or to ask for forgiveness. But it doesn't matter what she wants anymore. Ethan gently turns away before she can enter. He chooses his present, not his past awes of love, healed because he chose himself. Laura freezes on the sidewalk, realizing that the world no longer waits for her. The man she once controlled, humiliated, and emotionally destroyed doesn't stop for her anymore. Ethan doesn't need closure, revenge, or validation. His life is full without her. The sound of laughter echoes from his table, not mocking her, but proving that healing exists beyond heartbreak. She finally understands that her confession wasn't power. It was a key that unlocked his freedom. She wanted to crush him, but instead, she forced him to rebuild, grow, rediscover himself, and create a life where she has no seat. Ethan smiles gently at the person sitting across from him, and the future doesn't scare him anymore. The final line lives inside him without bitterness. She confessed to break me. Instead, she built my freedom. He has survived, evolved, and finally reclaimed his peace. And that is the real ending.